That's right, everybody. Bayern, with just 10 men, beaten this weekend by Borussia Monchengladbach. Union Berlin drew. Dortmund won, which means we've now got 3 teams tied atop the table in Germany. It is the Bundesliga's tightest ever title race, according to Bundesliga.com, Rafa.
And they would know. It's great. I mean, Bayern's weakness has opened the doors, and in the past few years, no one's been able to actually take advantage. But we have more consistency now. We have Union going really strong. You have Dortmund. Even Freiburg and Frankfurt are not out of the mix. And Leipzig, 4 points off, I think shouldn't be discounted either. So it's a genuine, at this moment, genuine title race. And everyone's really enjoying it, with, of course, the exception of our friends from Bavaria.
Right, who have a history of problems with Borussia Mönchengladbach, who enjoyed the 3-2 win this weekend.
Yeah, a bogey team for them, especially in recent years. Even when Lucien Favre was there, they really struggled. But now it's 5 games they couldn't win against them. Julian Nagelsmann record is very poor. And it was the manner of the defeat which raised questions, but more so even the reaction, I think, because Julian Nagelsmann tried to do one thing, but ended up doing another thing, which is to, instead of deflecting attention, as you often do when you attack referees and say, oh, this is a disgrace, he actually attracted more attention on himself because of the language he used, which was really out of order. It doesn't translate very well what he said, weichgespültes Pack. Literally, it means soft-rinsed mob. But, yeah, I know you're looking at me puzzlingly. The idea is that you're so soft that you kind of don't really have the cojones to stand up and give a real opinion, and you're a coward. And
of the referee?
Yeah. But the second part, the mob or the bunch, Pack in German is a very sort of nasty word if you describe a group of people.
Like a rabble.
Yeah, but rabble, if you describe the rabble, you'd say, yeah, fine. But it is quite derogatory. And the referees, the head of the refereeing association came out and said this is totally disrespectful. Nagelsmann will get heavily punished. I think there's still a chance he might not see the game against Union, which is a key game now.
Right, next
on Sunday.
Yeah.
Being perhaps banned. He did apologize and said, look, it happened in the heat of the emotion. The problem is it didn't really, because this happened in the 10th minute, and about 90 to 100 minutes later, he had that outburst in front of everyone in the mixed zone. It felt very staged, but not very well thought through. And it does speak to some of the big question marks around him, which is not so much what he does on the pitch, because you can debate whether the formation is right and some of the decisions he's making, or people will have different opinions. But there's been this lingering doubt about his maturity. Not so much because of his age, because we've seen 35-year-olds in this position before, but actually being able to handle this dressing room, being able to handle himself, not saying things that backfire. And it's a sort of thing that if Bayern were to lose out on the championship, if he were to become the first manager since Jupp Heynckes in 2012 not to win the title with Bayern, it'd be on the wrong side of the page, if you will, on the minus side against him. And that's why it was a very important moment, but not the one he wanted.
Level on points now with Union, who they'll be facing next Sunday, and with Dortmund, who had a whopping 4-1 win over Hertha Berlin. Magnificent backheel goal by Eddie Yemi in that match. But then in the course of setting up the second, he does, what was it, his hamstring or something? Yeah. How long is he going to be out for?
About 3 weeks,
right.
Which is a real shame, because he'll miss the Chelsea game, and he's been really in form, playing on the left since the winter break, much more effective there, using his pace, scoring this great goal, as you said, and quite funny, but unfortunate for him, crossing that ball, and as he's crossing the ball, he's already going down holding his hamstring. But at least he made that second goal. And Dortmund have strength in numbers. They have real depth at the moment, because the injury problems that they've had in recent years, and especially in the first half of the season, they have given way to lots of choices. And I think at that moment, things could have gone one way or the other. You could have had a situation, maybe in an more extreme sense, that you have a Chelsea where there's so many players the coach just doesn't know how to keep everyone happy and to find a system that works with the dressing harmony and the tactics and everything. Or you can have that rivalry, a positive competitiveness, a sense of, everyone has to be a little bit on the edge because there's so many options. And Terzic has managed to create that kind of vibe. And it's been a completely different Dortmund. They've won 8 in a row. Mm. Not all of them super convincing, but they're finding ways of winning, whereas in the past they used to find often ways to lose games or draw them at least.
And in that run of consecutive victories, of course, a win against Chelsea just last week. This midweek, we've also got a Bundesliga side up against their Premier League team, as RB Leipzig welcome Man City. Last time City went there, they lost 2-1, Rafa.
Correct.
What's going to happen this time?
I think they had a man sent off as well. Leipzig had a good run themselves. They lost against Union last weekend, but before then, this long spell of unbeaten games. I think it was 18 games.
Yeah, I think
they went unbeaten.
20 or something.
They beat Wolfsburg this weekend.
Yeah, but
yes.
last week they lost against Union. And it's a similar story to Dortmund in the sense that they have a lot of quality, and the biggest one, of course, of all is coming back. Christopher Nkunku is back. I don't think he'll start on Wednesday, but he will have some involvement, and that makes a huge difference to a team that is already pretty good going forward, but he will add another extra level of quality.
And City know all about Nkunku.
They do know all about him because he scored a hat-trick in the 6-3 defeat at the Etihad in 2021. And, of course, he's become a much better player. And so have Leipzig, arguably, under Marco Rose. A much happier side. A lot more togetherness. And defensively, they look a lot more solid. So, ordinarily you'd say City, Red Bull is a bit of a mismatch. City have all the star players.
City have failed to win 4 of their last 5 on the road.
Well, I was going to come on to that, but I think the bigger factor is that City have shown vulnerability against that type of opposition in the Champions League.
What kind of opposition?
Well, opposition that is perhaps not in the top tier, but still finds a way of knocking them out because perhaps they underestimate them. I'm thinking of Monaco, Lyon. I would include Spurs in that. So I think Red Bull... shouldn't call them Red Bull.
You've had already before.
RB Leipzig, of course, who have nothing to do with Red Bull. RB Leipzig, they will take some encouragement from City's problems and from their own form against teams of this kind of nature. They've beaten City last year, 2 years ago, as you mentioned. They've beaten Real Madrid in the group stage. They've beaten Atletico Madrid not long ago. They've beaten Man United at home. So who knows? I think they have a chance.
Yeah. Some of the nicest combinations in attack of the group stage were actually by Leipzig. I remember a couple of really nice goals, but there is a player who's standing out because it took him some time to adapt, I think, to the Bundesliga, Szoboszlai. But he's playing really well now. He's making a difference there.
Thank you for bringing him up. I've interviewed him, and that piece will be out in The Athletic on Wednesday.
All right. What was he unhappy about, Rafa?
No, he's actually very happy. And some of the problems that you talked about, Alvaro, were due to injury. He arrived and never played a game for Julian Nagelsmann. He then found a bit of form. They got injured again. Then I think also suffered from the change of management because, he had Jesse Marsch, Tedesco, lots of changes. Marco Rose is a guy that worked with him already when he was 16 at Salzburg because Rose was the under-18s coach at the time. Mm-hmm. And there's a real trust and confidence, and I think you see that because he's a guy who's got all the ability, but perhaps in the past didn't have the rhythm or the confidence, or however you want to call it, to have that consistently on the pitch. And now he's showing that, and he's become a key player for this team. And I think in the list of players that are destined to go places, and we know that Nkunku is going, that Guardiola is probably going as well in the summer. He's probably sort of the next in line, waiting for his big breakthrough moment, and I think it could come this week against City.
Wow, Szoboszlai, a big goal show favourite in the past. The Totally Football Show podcast is available 3 times a week, bringing you all the football news you could reasonably be expected to care about. We've got views, we've got stats, we've got analysis, we've got some of the best football writers around, and the whole thing is absolutely free. So have a listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or all the usual places by clicking on the link below.